Step by step, Frontline takes us through the wheeling and dealing that went on to prevent President Jimmy Carter from carrying out a plan for the release of the hostages in June of 1980. After a 6-month investigation, producer Robert Ross and reporter Robert Perry based their case on numerous interviews with people who claimed knowledge about the Reagan campaign contacts with Iran's revolutionary government.
The 1980s arrived like a neon-lit fever dream, an era of material excess, political conservatism, and economic upheaval masquerading as prosperity. As Wall Street boomed and shopping malls overflowed, the American dream began to look less like justice and more like a gold American Express card. Ronald Reagan promised to restore greatness. His tax cuts for the wealthy and corporate deregulation unleashed profits at the top, but left the working class chasing crumbs.
Our aim is to increase our national wealth so all will have more, not just redistribute what we already have, which is just a sharing of scarcity. Thank you, and good night.
But amid the glitz and gloss, a different war was brewing. One waged not overseas, but in America's own streets. The war on drugs turned addiction into a battlefield.
Say yes to your life, and when it comes to drugs and alcohol, just say no.
This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
You, all right? I learned it by watching you.
Parents who use drugs have children who use drugs.
With slogans instead of solutions, the Reagan administration cracked down hard, especially in communities of color. Mandatory minimums and harsh sentencing ballooned the prison population, fueling cycles of poverty and punishment. Crack cocaine, far cheaper and more prevalent in black neighborhoods, drew far steeper penalties than powder. Justice wore a blindfold, but the scales weren't balanced. Television glamorized greed. Dallas and Dynasty turned oil barons into sex symbols and wealth into virtue. Millions turned in each week to root for the rich.
How lavish a lifestyle would you lead if you were the richest man on earth?
Cable TV fed the hunger for more. MTV made image as important as music. Pop stars became mythic. Fashion, rebellion, and celebrity fused into a new cultural currency. Home entertainment exploded. VHS tapes, video games, and cable channels gave every living room a front row seat to a new American spectacle. But the flash couldn't cover the fear. The 1984 Los Angeles Olympics were flooded with security, still haunted by the ghost of Munich, where 11 Israeli athletes were murdered in 1972. America couldn't forget, even if it tried.
Today, one observer gave them a new name, the Bloody Olympics.
Reagan flexed American muscle abroad, invading Grenada in 1983, to oust a Marxist regime and rescue American students. It was swift, dramatic, and deeply polarizing.
This morning, the panel will resume the questioning of Lieutenant Colonel North.
But not every foreign venture went so smoothly. In the Iran-Contra scandal, the Reagan administration secretly sold arms to Iran, an enemy state, and funded the profits to right-wing rebels in Nicaragua, defying Congress and nearly derailing his presidency.
For his part, Mr. Reagan kept up his own silence today and let his spokesman do the talking. CBS News correspondent Terrence Smith reports the latest evidence that this so-called Stonewall strategy isn't sitting well with the public.
It was a convoluted tale of covert deals, cover-ups, and denials, but for Americans, it barely registered, drowned out by pop culture and the booming economy. At home, the culture wars ignited.
Our next guest is a mother of 4 who has channeled her outrage over sexually explicit rock music lyrics into action. She has waged a tireless battle against the record industry giants to compel them to provide warning labels on albums with questionable lyrics. She says they're making progress, but fight has just begun. Please welcome to the 700 Club the co-founder of Parents Music Resource Center and author of a new book called Raising Kids in an X-Rated Society. Welcome, Tipper Gore. Hello, Tipper.
Hello, Denise.
Good to have you here.
The PMRC demanded warning labels on music. Artists pushed back, but parental advisory stickers became a new badge of rebellion. In the midst of it all, television sought comfort. Family sitcoms offered moral clarity and happy endings. PBS educated and nurtured, fulfilling new mandates for meaningful children's programming. After new FCC guidelines required kids' shows to be educational, public television rose to the challenge, offering science, empathy, and diversity in a decade defined by division.
We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents. And you have a brand new, beautiful tree. That easy.
But on network television, Saturday morning told a different story. Most cartoons were little more than 30-minute commercials, vehicles designed to sell action figures, dolls, and lunchboxes to impressionable kids. What mattered wasn't the lesson, it was the brand. Storylines were secondary to sales. Childhood itself became a market. While television nurtured young minds, it also fueled fear.
Acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Once thought to affect only promiscuous homosexual males, AIDS is now spreading in epidemic proportions to other segments of the population.
When AIDS emerged, many news outlets framed it as punishment, a gay plague, turning a public health crisis into a moral judgment.
A mystery disease known as the gay plague has become an epidemic unprecedented in the history of American medicine.
For years, the Reagan administration said nothing. Silence and stigma thrived, while activists screamed to be heard. It would take nearly 90,000 American deaths before Washington even spoke the word AIDS in earnest.
We're still learning about how AIDS is transmitted, but experts tell us you don't get it from telephones or swimming pools or drinking fountains.
While cable went wild, the moral majority preached control. Family values became a political rally cry, weaponized to fight everything from gay rights to feminism to rap lyrics.
In recent decades, the American family has come under virtual attack.
Meanwhile, media campaigns painted Africa with a single sorrowful brush. Charity drives and telethons showed starving children, but ignored the continent's resilience, diversity, and strength, reducing a vast, vibrant world into a symbol of helplessness. Well-meaning efforts raised millions, but they also crystallized damaging stereotypes, shaping how generations of Americans would view an entire continent. In 1987, Reagan's FCC repealed the Fairness Doctrine, a long-standing rule that required broadcasters to present contrasting viewpoints. Without it, the airwaves tilted sharply to one side, and they never tilted back.
Some claim that the so-called Fairness Doctrine is needed to prevent broadcasters from abusing their freedom and slanting their coverage. Of course, the First Amendment does not guarantee a fair press, only a free press.
What we're seeing here is the ultimate transfer of monopoly power to the broadcast industry, who already have exclusive licenses to decide who says what on TV and now don't have to worry about fairness anymore.
The Fairness Doctrine required television and radio stations to present opposing views on significant issues in their communities. Many broadcasters wanted the doctrine abolished.
I think it's long overdue.
Why?
Because fundamentally, I see no reason why
broadcast journalists should be subject to government restriction any more than print journalists are subject to government restriction.
Until the Reagan era of deregulation, newspaper publishers operated without government restrictions, but television broadcasters had the restrictions, and for one strong reason.
Broadcasters have received the privilege of using a public resource, the airwaves, a scarce resource, and as a quid pro quo for that privilege, they have had to comply with certain public trustee obligations, including the Fairness Doctrine.
Robert Perry has argued Fairness Doctrine cases on behalf of the American Civil Liberties Union and says the doctrine has promoted freedom of speech and press.
For example, in the 1960s in the South, there were a number of broadcasters. They simply didn't cover the civil rights demonstrations and marches, and various groups filed fairness complaints with the FCC, thereby ensuring coverage of the integration point of view.
Advocates of decontrol say there are more broadcast news outlets now practicing higher news standards, thus assuring the airing of opposing views.
Broadcasters will continue to do what they've been doing, that is, to air opposing sides of issues of controversy, with or without a government mandate.
There will be court challenges to today's FCC ruling, and Congress will almost certainly try to pass the Fairness Doctrine into the law of the land, despite Ronald Reagan's threat to veto such a move as he did before. In Manhattan,
and then
I'm
came the
Neil
voice
Rosenau,
that would shape
Channel
the
2
future.
News.
Hello, goodbye. It's 7:03 in the morning on Wixie Solid Rock and Gold, the Bachelor Jeff Radio Network from 1360 Solid Rock and Gold.
And the formula for making you, the viewer or the listener, mad hasn't changed a bit, yet people keep falling for it.
Rush Limbaugh turned AM radio into a political weapon, railing against liberal elites, welfare, and women's rights with the fury of a firebrand preacher.
If you embellish the opinion with confidence and cockiness, then you're getting into generating hatred and so forth. Because a lot of people would love to be confident about what they think. Most people aren't. Most people are trepid.
Talk radio no longer had to be balanced, just compelling. Outrage sold. And from the static emerged a new conservative media machine that would one day spawn Fox News, dominate political discourse, and redefine truth itself.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
As the decade closed, a wall fell. Literally. In 1989, the Berlin Wall cracked and crumbled, ending decades of division and symbolizing the end of the Cold War. The world watched, breath held, fists raised, tears flowing. The moment marked more than a political shift. It was the end of an era. One that shaped a generation raised on fear, but now staring into the unknown with hope and hesitation.
So geht sie zu Bruch und nichts anderes. Und nicht das Loch.